It is my pleasure to invite Reverend Kandace Krapu here to share another nugget of wisdom from the Four Agreements.
All right. So those of you who were here last week, how was it being impeccable with your word? Did we try? Did we succeed? Okay. I'll take that. That was similar to me. Can't watch TV and be impeccable with my word, it appears. So we're talking about Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. And this is Toltec wisdom that hails from southern Mexico. And this wisdom is thousands of years old. Don Miguel Ruiz released this book more than 20 years ago. But since the wisdom is thousands of years old, it is still relevant. We make a lot of agreements in life around the way life is, around the way people are, around the way that we think of ourselves. And the most important agreements are the ones we make with ourselves. In fact, our agreements they actually rule our lives. It's like they're an unwritten personal law that's always in operation for us. So these four agreements help us break our connections to the agreements that we have that come from fear. And so last week we talked about being impeccable with your word, that your word is the power that you and I have to create. Our world manifests everything. Our word is like a force in the universe, and it's the most powerful tool that we have. That with our word, we can create good. In fact, we can actually create heaven in our life through the power of our word, especially if our word is life-affirming and constructive. But by the same token, we learn that we can also create hell, a living hell, by our word not being constructive and not being affirming. And I suggest to us that perhaps we've all done a little bit of both, maybe one more than the other. Now, Jesus told us, "It is done unto you as you believe." So impeccable has to do with the right use of really our energy. Being impeccable has to do with how we put our energy out into the world. Are we putting our energy out in the direction of truth and love? Because that's the ideal target. Are we putting our energy out in such a way that we cause no harm, no suffering? Are we putting our energy out in such a way that we lift other people up rather than tear them down? Are we putting our energy out so that people actually feel better about themselves because we've crossed their path, rather than they feel worse about themselves because they know us? So you measure your impeccability, the impeccability of your word, by the level of self-love you have for you. Now that was last week, so now everybody's up to speed. You know, if you weren't here last week, you're caught up, or maybe if you were dozing last week, you're caught up. So agreement 2. I really like this one. Don't take anything personally. Now, I don't know about you, but people I know really well, have a tendency to take everything personally. Like if it rains, it's personal. They're having a bad day today. You know, God sent it to me personally. It's ruining their day. And I know that you know these people. If they don't get the green light on the street, it's, oh my God, the universe is conspiring against me. Now, this is one of the reasons that I think Science of Mind has been so helpful for me about this conspiring business of the universe. Because I'm an inverse paranoid. I think that the universe is always conspiring to do me good all the time, behind my back, I believe that the universe is trying to do me good. And so this is why I can say, don't take anything personally. Don't take anything personally. Now, if you walk anywhere downtown in Mobile, just imagine this, you're walking downtown Mobile, maybe Tillman's Corner, I don't know, and there's a person there that you don't know from Adam. You've never met them before. They could be maybe a street person, or maybe somebody who's there with a nice aluminum colander on their head, and they may have some nice aluminum antennas coming out from that, some nice tin foil. Or just a person, just a normal kind of person, and you might see anywhere downtown. And just suppose they start to scream. They start to scream obscenities at you, or they point at you and scream that you're crazy, or that you're the devil itself. Yes, you are. And the mothership will be here any minute to take them out. You would know that that really has nothing to do with you, wouldn't you? You'd know that, because it's so extreme. And you don't have really any close connection to the colander hat person. You're not best friends with them or anything like that. So you wouldn't take that in. And you wouldn't be going like, oh my God, I've got to go home now. I better lay down for a while. I can't believe that they said that to me. I'm so hurt. I'm so devastated by all of that. I may not be able to go to work for a week. Geez, I'm feeling sick, how's this happening to me? You wouldn't do that. No, you would just let that roll right off your back. But see, we're such a tricky people. We think, but what if they really do know something about me? What if they are saying something about me? So the land-based people on the continent, on all of the continents actually, the indigenous peoples, what they all believed in some form of another was that if something comes to you 3 times, then you should pay attention. So if one person says something that's particularly critical to you, and this is really what we're talking about today, you could probably let that go. Honestly, you could just let that go. It's probably more about them than it is about you. But if somebody else in your life, and this is just an aside, this is just a little freebie here, it's not the talk, this is just an aside, but if another person who is a credible person comes and tells you the same thing, you might take a little note of that. Not a big note, but just a little jot. Like, okay, consider this, possibly. Now, if a third person comes into your life and tells you the same thing, then what these indigenous cultures tell us is that you may need to pay attention to that because there's something there for you. Now, they're not saying you're a terrible person, that you're not lovable, that you're not a good person, that you're not a child of God, you're not worthy. They're just saying that there's something there for you to look at. Now, back to what we're talking about today, not taking things personally. If you take something that somebody says personally, it's because on some level you agree with them. That's the truth. And you think it's actually true about you. That's why it has such an effect on you. But in Science of Mind, we teach that only what God created about you is true. And what God created is the beautiful, the loving, the perfect. That's what's true about you. So taking it personally is like the maximum expression of selfishness, because we really think that it is, that it really is, that everything is all about me. And we learn to take it personally, I think, when we're growing up, when we're being educated, when we're being domesticated and prepared for society. That's when we think that we're responsible somehow for everything. Don't you remember that as a little kid? That at some point in your life you started to think that I'm responsible for everything. That if mommy and daddy had a harsh word, then it must have something to do with you. If the teacher was in a bad mood in the first grade, it must have had something to do with you. If it rained, it must have had something to do with you. So we think we're the center of the universe. And here's the truth, that nothing that other people do is because of you. It is, in fact, because of them. Really, really, really. It's because of them. That insult that came your way has nothing to do with you. If you take it, though, it's like drinking poison. Don't take that poison. Don't take the poison. Now, I don't know in your life, but in my life, I don't know how often people said, don't take the poison. And we think, or I think, maybe just a little taste. I just want to taste it a little bit, just a little bit. No, don't take the poison. See, if their point of view comes from their programming, their history, their current state of consciousness, where they are, what they've been through. It's about them. You can be immune to the poison in the midst of hell. And I think, wow, that is great. I think that's the most phenomenal thing. Eleanor Roosevelt said no one can make you feel bad about yourself without your consent. Without your consent. So people can say crazy, outlandish things about you, but if you don't consent, there's no problem. And it's always been interesting to me how willing people are to concede. Oh, okay, you must be the new authority in my life. What's that about? Why do we do that? Think about it. How often have you felt offended, or need to defend, or need to create conflict in response to something that somebody says or does, or the need to be right? We all do that one. I love A Course in Miracles. There's a line in A Course in Miracles that said, would you rather be right or rather be happy? And I know we all want both. I know I do. I say, yeah, bring me both. Sign me up for that both. I'm right. Because if I am right, then I will be happy. But it doesn't work that way. See, it's not important to me what you think of me. Remember years ago, Terry Cole Whitaker, her first book was What You Think of Me Is None of My Business. That principle has never changed. It's still true today. What other people think of you is really none of your business. And so therefore, we don't have to take what other people think personally. And we may say, how is that possible? Well, you know who you are. When you know who you are, when you know what you're here to do, when you know what you're here to express, when you know what you're here to give into life, you know who you are. People will come and they'll say, oh, you said this and it hurt me. In response to that, the first thing I would say is, well, we're all on a spiritual path here. And we all have enough awareness to know that we don't get up in the morning and the first thing we do is we say, what can I do today to cause some suffering in the world? That's not who we are. So we're not intentionally trying to create any kind of hurtful energy in the universe. In Ephesians in the Bible, it says, be ye kind. Really good advice, I think. I think just be kind, be nice. And then I look at myself and how many times have I yelled that in my living room? Can't you just be nice? Be ye kind. Don't you people read the Bible? And that's just me and the TV. There's nobody else there. Just me yelling at the TV. But if people do get hurt, you get to check in with yourself and say, Was there anything in me that was intentionally trying to be hurtful or diminishing? Because the big picture is they probably have wounds. And what you've done is you've lit up their wounds. Another way of saying this is that they have buttons and you've pressed their buttons. So we all see the world differently. We all bring something different to the scene. And that's where I think it gets really, really interesting. It's that we bring something to the scene. They talk about this example where if there are 4 people and they're on 4 different corners and they all witness the same accident, they would all describe it completely differently. They would all describe it absolutely completely differently. Now I know in my family growing up, I have a younger brother. And we can talk about very specific things, very, very specific events. And we'll agree that that event happened. But we each have our own completely different spin on it. Remember what happened at Easter? No, that was Christmas. You're crazy. So other than the fact that the event happened, that the asteroid hit or whatever it was, we don't remember it the same at all. The house was full. There were 30 people there. No, we were all alone. The dogs were wild outside. No, we didn't even have dogs when that was going on. We can't agree on absolutely any of it. So I know then that we all bring something of our own, something that's uniquely us to all of the scene. And another way of saying this is that we create the entire movie. We're the writer and the director and the producer, and you're the star of that movie. You are the star actor. Everybody else who's in the movie, all of those other people who show up in your life, they're supporting roles only.